Greetings, Underlords. I am Neon, and I'm here to talk about the patch notes that just came out. I actually was recording a video while the patch notes came out for it. I don't know if they're live yet, but I'll find that out soon. But yeah, we have a sweet set of patch notes here. A lot of changes. This is a more substantial buff patch. We've had a number of patches obviously recently, and some of which are smaller, some of which are larger. General stuff here. We do have a leaderboard here, which is very cool. Actually, let's open this up right now. Lords of the White Spire updates every hour. Got nothing. Okay. Interesting to see where I rank on this eventually, and how many people boss 5. Oh, you have to be boss level 5. That's a pretty big ask. So this will be a very exclusive. So I'm excited to see that, because I don't think there are any big boss level 5s yet, from what I understand, but I could be wrong. Okay, other than that, I don't think that there's anything in here. So Yo Reddit, there's a few things here. Versus round over and round start screens will close on any non-UI click or escape key presses. I don't know really what that means, but that's like fine. Well, don't worry about that. These are all just UIs things. They don't actually matter. Yeah, same with the mobile stuff. No big differences here. Gameplay fixed Demon's Hunters not working properly. Fixed techies planting their bombs in the wrong location. I actually think this could be substantial for techies. Techies is pretty bad right now for a number of reasons. One of which is placing the bombs behind them is really not where you want it. Like he's a ranged unit, which is not like really what you want for the effect that he has. Like you want him, like you're really playing him for his ability. So dropping a big bomb and then blowing up your opponent's team. And the fact that he dropped the bombs behind him and he was ranged meant that a lot of the times you didn't get very good coverage in your bombing. So the fact that you can now that's now changed, that he's going to be dropping it in front of him, means that he might. Doesn't actually say whether it's going to be in front of him, but I'm fascinated to see how this works, because this could be a substantial upgrade for the unit in how things end up functioning. And then also we're going to get to the Blink Dagger changes later on, which I think it matters a lot for him. Not a lot, but it matters some for him too. Other things, so we have the AI pathing issues being improved. Hopefully, every now and then, they still do weird shit, so this will hopefully limit that. Level 9 and level 11 odds changes. So we see for level 9 just a shift from the odds of going from level for the tier 2s and tier 3s, like skewing it to tier 3s. I actually only really saw these recently, that these were publicly available. I didn't know that they were available up until very, very recently, and I kind of saw where they're all like a position, and I kind of have to put it in my head a little bit more to understand. Like, for instance, if you go to level 9, you increase your chances of getting level 3 units. So that if I'm looking for something like completing a Lycan, completing a what are some other good level 3 stuff, like completing a level 2 Slark, that getting to that level 9 status is going to be a big difference in your chances of improvements, maybe, of getting the tier 3 units. Maybe I'll have to kind of get more familiar with that, though. And then level 9, this is level 11 rather. This is for higher class of criminal. It is a controversial item, I think. It has some different people have very different takes on exactly where it stands. As of right now, it is going to be giving you a little bit less of the tier 5 units, which is one of the main reasons that you play it. Like, you want to be able to get to your level 3s, Tide Hunters, and Enigmas. Well, not level 3s, but level 2s, because you can, when you have 15% chance, you have pretty good odds of finding a level 2 of each of these units if you're trying to build them. And then rounds will continue for another second once the last unit dies, giving the other team a chance for a last-minute kill to force a draw, which is very cool. I'm happy to see that. Reworked streaks. This is actually really, really interesting. So the first one is that the lost streaks have been changed so that you no longer get the 3 gold lost streaks, which I think is good because the lost streaks were a little bit too abusive, like in the sense that people would deliberately take their ratings, like especially in the early game, so with especially Silver Lining. We'll talk about Silver Lining later. I think that item now is just fucking trash, but deliberately tanking in the early game, like hard tanking in the early game, like open forting now, I think is just bad. The fact that you don't get that 3 gold streak is pretty substantial there. So that makes it like, while you can still go into a soft loss streak and be okay and do decent, I don't think that you can go to a full loose loss streak and get into that as a strategy anymore. Like open forting seems pretty horrible now. Win streak gold, 3 to 4 wins is 1 gold. Oh, so that's the same as before. 5 6 is 2. 7 gives you 3. 8 gives you 4, and then it resets. That is a really fascinating change, given that I think the part of this here is that they want the game to be a little bit less snowbally, and they want to kind of, I think, bring in some of the extremes for it, of either somebody goes into a big loss streak at the beginning of the game, which isn't a particularly good play pattern as a game design stance, because you don't want it, the correct strategy is to just do nothing. Like that's not good gameplay. So eliminating that play pattern, and then at the same time, there's, like, we've all been in those games where one player gets to an early win streak and they happen to have a army, a team that scales well, and then they just scale all the way to the late game and are far ahead by the end, and ride win streaks for a really, really long time. So this is going to make that a little bit less useful, or a little bit less snowbally. It's definitely an overall nerf in the gold intake from a win streaking player. So you're going to still have a huge advantage. It's not quite as big. Item changes. Added Force Staff, Tier 3 support item. Push an enemy unit 6 cells in a random direction. 10-second cooldown. This is a really weird one. I'm going to have to play with this one, I think, a little bit. 10 seconds is a pretty short cooldown. I think this seems interesting situationally, but it's probably, like, it's worse than a lot of other ones. It's, like, going to be worse than, Relic. It's worse than Smuggler or Falcon Grace. It's worse than a lot of things that are just generically good. I think that it's probably okay in some situations, especially if you're against a lineup that has a few key frontlining units like Tide Hunter. It'll be okay there. I don't know. This is when I'll have to play with it against in order to get a good sense of it. Scythe of Vice, rather. This is one that I have a hard time keeping track of the name of this one because it has all sorts of funky spelling in it. Tier 4 support item. When the equipped item hero takes damage, transform the offending unit into a pig for 4 seconds with a 15-second cooldown. Once again, 15-second cooldown. That's like not very long. This was actually one that I was discussing in Discord, which you can join. There's a link to that in the description below if you are interested in doing that. But yeah, this is one where you can put this on either a off tank. I think it's pretty good on an off tank because you put it on whatever it is, like you have your main tank of whatever is like a Pudge or whatever you want to put, usually like a Vanguard or a Blade Mail or whatever it is on it, and then maybe you have something that's like a secondary tank like Tiny or something along these lines where maybe it's not like positioned perfectly to absorb maximum heat, or you put this like on a lone druid will be pretty good on this because he sticks around for a while, and he's going to be your main tank most often, but he'll be your secondary tank quite often, and you'll be able to get this off multiple times per battle, and will therefore screw up your opponent's front line quite a lot. And it's really, really good against opponents that are relying on a big, like either a Kunkka or a Tide Hunter, like these frontlining units that have really powerful abilities. Sometimes Enigma will be in a frontline position too. Techies, we'll see him that if he does end up seeing play, will be good against him there. The fact that, like, one of my particular applications of this I think is quite interesting is you could put this on like a shitter unit, like one of the crappy units that you have in your team that's just there to kind of complete some alliances. Like, he's not actually doing anything in terms of, like, you don't care about his ability, you don't care about his, damage, you just care about his tags. In one of those situations, you put them with the side of eyes and you, put them like front row center in front of, like, try to place it in front of your opponent's Tide Hunters and Kunkkas, etc., to isolate them. So it gives them a little bit more purpose in the game, and kind of has them as a sacrifice too. So that's interesting. At a big time contract support tier 2 item, equip unit is bloodbound in addition to its other types. Really, really weird one here. Gonna say I am gonna have to play this with this one in order to have any idea how it works. It's probably horrible, given the fact that Bloodbound is pretty bad. But I don't even know if it's worth trying, really. Like, maybe there's some abusive way for you to do it. I really don't know. I have a hard time believing this is good. Well, I'm interested. I'm looking forward to proving wrong, seeing the broken big time contract build. Silver Linings now reads: get 1 charge when you win a fight. When you lose a fight, if charges remain, get 1 gold and lose 1 charge. Really clunky rework for this. I think that it's terrible. I think that it's really, really bad, and because the biggest advantage for Silver Lining is that you just start open forting on round 4, and you can't do that anymore with this. So I think that you'll basically never play this, and it's really bad. Shaman Pluck, chance increased from 5% to 17%. This is the idea of chance of turning your opponent's units into a chicken when they attack your shaman. It was so bad before, like, nobody took it. I mean, like, shaman generally were bad. So the fact that it is also been, it is over 3 times nerf, buff right now. It is going up from 5% to 17%. And there's a huge increase. I still don't know whether I want to play this, because I don't know whether I want to play shaman. It's like that's how bad they are. So I mean, there are some other changes to Shaman too, so, like, I'm not gonna totally throw it out, but I'm gonna have a hard time with this one. I mean, I think that when you have, like, this does make Arc Warden strategies realistic, because if you have a bunch of Arc Wardens and you're kind of chaining stunning, hexing your opponent's shit, that there is a chance to kind of go off, and it gives you that extra time in order to continue getting your refreshers off, continue getting your mana boots off, etc., and you are able to go off with it. Like, that's kind of interesting. It still feels like a meme more than a competitive strategy, though. Blink Dagger now generates 50 mana when activated. This is huge. This is so big, because the big issue with it is that when you were in a lineup that was non-assassins, Blink Dagger, like, you threw something into the back line, it just got eviscerated, and the battle went on. Now it's going to be able to blink into the back lines, often get its ability off, and then die, probably. And there's a lot of cases where that's, like, totally fine. I'm thinking Techies. I'm thinking Tide Hunter. I'm thinking Tiny. It doesn't always have to be the endgame units that this is going to be good with. Tiny, I think, with Blink Dagger before was, like, decent. It was one of the few units that I was like, yeah, I think this is, like, okay. I think he's going to be actively good with Blink Dagger now, because you jump into the back line, toss something up in the air, like, it's functionally going to be a Ravage in the mid-game. Like, that sounds like an exaggeration. I don't know if it is. I think that Tiny is absurd right now. I've been, like, sort of every day I've been playing and be like, you know what, Tiny is busted. Tiny is so good as a level 1 unit because you get a stun, and stuns are so good in this game because battles last, like the real battles last 10 seconds, and if your opponent's shit is stunned for like 1.5 seconds of that, you're gonna win. So especially the first 1.5 seconds is going to be a big deal. So I think that this is really, really cool. And then also you have the cooldown reduced from 60 seconds to 15 seconds. Once again, this is a pretty big deal with something like Tiny in the mid game. You set it off for the first thing, you set off a jump, toss, stun, and then maybe things get a little bit disorganized, and the battle goes on for a little while, and then you one of the things that you can find in those late game scenarios is that you get kind of kited by something like, I don't know, Mirana or whatever by some of your warrior units, for example. And once again, Tiny will be able to wear this really well because he'll blinks across, throw something up in the air once again, and ends the battle that way. Just a great way to increase the mana recharge of a unit like that. So there's a lot of interesting stuff going on with this now. I think that Blink Dagger is actually worth playing in some compositions. Not everybody's going to want it, but in some compositions, I actually think it's going to be actively great. Because something like Blink Ravage, that'll just fuck up so many people, and there's so little counterplay to it because it'll be so fast. There's no amount of positioning that you can really do in order to get that totally on lockdown. So I mean, maybe there's something, but it'll be tough. Tooth and Claw. Fixed, not stacking correctly. That's cool. Coordinate Assault should now actually be working. This has been something that's been frustrating for me because there's been a few times where I'm like, I want to try this because it's going to be good in my composition, but it's been broken a lot. I don't know why this particular ability is so hard to get right because it's had to change a few times. This is a big one. The hero changes. Medusa, Split Shot now applies item effects on secondary shots. Medusa is really good. I don't know if you guys knew this. Medusa is a powerful unit that has seen tremendous amount of play in very good lineups. And I don't feel that it needed a buff, but I mean, here we are. This with Basher, this with the Maelstrom, there's a lot of things with this one that you're going to feel. I don't know how it works. It's a Blightstone. If it does apply with a Blightstone too, that's really solid. I mean, obviously Blightstone is not what you want on her in the end game, but if you just happen to have a Blightstone and you get an early Medusa somehow, you're giving the entire enemy team -3 armor. Jesus, this is really good. I think Hunters were really good before, and they are insane now. Between this and the Blink Ravage possibilities, I'm very, very interested. I'm very, very interested. I guess the Blink Dagger is a good counter to Hunters, so maybe that's not on net. It's hard to evaluate, but yeah, this is. Medusa's really good, guys. Medusa's really, really good. Lycan, Shaman Walls, fixed, not applying health buff correctly. I don't know exactly what that means, but it's a good thing for Lycan, probably. Venomancer, a health increased by 50 at the base level, and then more at all the other levels. Summon count increased from Ward 1 to 4 wards. Rank is all okay. So you're going to spam. You are going to spam wards once you get to level 2. There'll be a ton of them for it. So cast point increased. That cooldown increased from 5 to 5, 6, 7. That's a little bit unfortunate. And worth a 50% magic resistance. Okay, I mean, that's kind of cool. Because yeah, they kind of got blown up by any amount of AoE. So that's neat. I think that this is going to be pretty good on Tooth and Claw build. I've messed around with Venomancer more than most, I think. He is very inconsistent. He has good tags for the mid game. Does not scale well into the late game, in my opinion, but he is interesting now to play around with a little bit more. Yeah, if you get the Tooth and Claw particularly, and you get into level 2, I think that you're really going to notice it, because the Tooth and Claw is a pretty good perk for the beginning, because you really feel that extra damage. So and especially when you get a lot of wards out. So if a fast level 2 Venomancer with Tooth and Claw is a very viable idea at the very least. It depends on what the rest of the composition looks like. You can go for something like a Beasts Warriors type line. Disruptor. Alliance has changed from Brawny Shaman to Brawny Shaman-Warlock. This is the first unit that has 2 class designations, which is kind of cool. I was waiting for something like that to take place. The other one that I have been thinking about of getting a similar designation would actually be Ogre Magi. You could have it Bloodbound Warrior Mage, for example, because it's functionally much more like a warrior than it is a mage. But that which would be, not that mages and warriors need above, but the this is interesting. Warlocks, though, we're going to talk about more, so I'm going to leave this. So Static Storm also gives targets... Oh, it's also... Okay. This is pretty big, then. Because when I first read this, I thought it's just changed to 25% mischance, as opposed to, for instance, the silencing thing, which made it pretty shitty against anything that wasn't exactly mages. Now, it's kind of fascinating because it also works against everything. It works against warriors. It works against hunters decently well. So he is still going to be pretty situational. The fact that the base unit has not been improved in any substantial way makes me kind of suspect that he's going to make it, because the unit itself is so bad. But if it will be making it, it'll be on the back of the tag change, I expect. Mr. Warlock. Shadow Word. This is a fascinating one. Cast point reduced from 0.5 seconds to 0.4 seconds. By the way, I think that means the cast time, the time that it requires from beginning to the cast to the end of the time that the spell is actually released. So that's a reasonable, that's a small benefit right there. Cooldown reduced from 20 seconds to 6 seconds. This is a really short cooldown. You're going to notice that this is a very, very short cooldown. Damage from 100, 150, 200 to 50, 100, and 150. And then heal also similarly reduced. So this is and then the duration has gone from 6 seconds to 3 seconds. So it's now doing 50 damage per second for 3 seconds. So it's 150 damage for it. But given the fact that you're going to be able to spam this reasonably well, I think is really interesting. And you'll see that this matters a lot for the Warlock alliance changes. So we'll actually just get into here. Warlock alliance changes. Now reads whenever a Warlock casts a spell, they form a link with the ally with the lowest health for 3 seconds. When either linked hero deals damage, both units are healed 50, 100, 150 of the damage dealt. So the reason why the Warlock, Mr. Warlock's spell change matters so much is that it's a very spammable spell. 6 second cooldown is not very long. And if you get this with Octarine Essence, it's very short. And I'll have to kind of see how... I don't know enough about how mana works in order to know whether or not the damage that you get from the spell itself gives you the mana back. So I don't kind of get a good feel about how that functions and whether or not you'll be able to keep up with casting it with the cooldown at that point. But that's going to be a really, really short cooldown / like cast cycle, and that means also that you'll be able to spam out these Warlock healing links. And when you put that all together, it actually does have some interesting applications for it, and it does also still... I think that it works a lot better for the like what you want in those compositions with the Warlock compositions, because I've messed around with Warlocks a lot more than I think most people have. It's a composition for whatever reason I have a soft spot for. One of the things about it that is fascinating is you like the fact that the heal is going to everything is kind of interesting, but it's not great, since you would rather the heal be really focused on the units that are the lowest. I'm very interested to see whether this stacks. Because like, for instance, if you get into the mid game of a 4 Warlock, 4, I don't know, whatever, like Knights composition, that sounds terrible, but, go, like work with me here. In that situation, like, maybe you have Omni Knight or Abaddon that are your, tanking heroes, and in that case, like, there's a pretty good chance that you could easily have multiple Warlock bonuses like happening at once on a given unit, since it's going to be the lowest, and like you would rather it have it layered there so that it's getting like, whatever it is, 300% healing based on damage. It does still make these compositions really vulnerable to stuns, which was the case before as well. And so it doesn't solve that. I'm very interested to play with this. Is that the short form of what I'll say on this, because I honestly have no idea how it's going to feel. And the fact that Warlock has, in my mind, a substantial buff to his operations, it makes a pretty big difference, because it means that you can go to level 2 Warlock, you can then path into a 4 Warlock build shortly there afterwards. Like, I think that something like Trolls, Warlocks seems, like Trolls, Warlocks, Warriors or something, because it seems kind of interesting too. I don't know. There's possibilities here that are fascinating, and we'll have to look at it. So this is one that I'm very, very curious about. Shaman, last one, now requires 3 Shaman, up from 2. Reads, enemies affected by hexes, silence, or stun will generate negative 200% mana when attacked. So I think that this means that they just don't have any mana. You basically just drain all their mana. Yeah, okay, as opposed to positive mana, they get negative mana for it. That's fine. So, okay, sure. I guess that that's kind of the thing of Shamans, is they have these disables. Silence is being thrown in there too is a big deal for the for a few different possibilities there. Like, you could do like a humans one. No, I guess like silence plus negative mana doesn't actually make a big of a difference because there's silence anyway. I guess that is kind of the weakness of silences, is that as soon as the silence is gone, then they just fire off the spell immediately, because they always have their bit mana full by the time that they're done. This one I'm still skeptical of, based on how bad the Shaman units are. Like, we have Shadow Shaman, the Disruptor, Arc Warden are our Shamans. They are all trash. Like, those are pretty close to my bottom 4 units in like the abstract of the game. Like, if I had to, like, obviously, things like Shadow Shaman fit well into given compositions, and like Arc Warden, Crystal Maiden plus Refresher, like that's a cool interaction and can actually be good. And sometimes I still stand by the fact that there are some compositions that do want to do that, but the issue is you so rarely want each of these pieces like together at once, like, because partly like they're all some of the weakest units in their compositions too. They're kind of a linchpin piece, like fitting this together. Like the Shadow Shaman, the reason that you play him is either you get an early level 2, kind of for free, and then you pair him with Bat Rider, and you're off to the races. For the what are some of the other ones? So Disruptor. Like, I just think that it was almost never correct to play Disruptor. He's just so rarely correct. And, like, what is the composition that wants 3 of these? Like, what do you have as your front line? And then what do you have as your damage? Because they don't do either of them particularly well. I mean, are they supposed to be your frontlining units? That sounds horrible. Horrible. like you put it in a Trolls lineup, you compare this with what's it called with Witch Doctor. I honestly don't know what you're supposed to do with this. I'm trying to think about it, and I'm like, what would be a Shaman's lineup look like? Interested to hear other people's thoughts on this one. Like, if you have an idea of like what a 3 Shaman composition would look like, God Almighty! Like the more that I think about, it, like they're just all seem horrid. Yeah, because none of these two they have no synergy with one another. Because you have like Mono Desales, but even like Arc Warden doesn't fit into that category. It's like the idea is buying time so that Arc Warden can multiply. I'm not buying it. I'm having a hard time with this one. Okay, I think that there's some messing around. Like maybe there I'm not giving enough credits to a really like you get the perk. It feels like you have to get so much to go right. I'll leave this. I'll leave it, and maybe there'll be somebody out there who cracks it, and I hope that they do. That'll be really really sick. But count me as skeptical. But that'll do it for me today. Be sure to check out the video that I'll probably be showing up around the same time in the feed as this one. It was a game that I thought went really really well. It was really really interesting. Showed some of the things that I feel like I've been learning recently in the game, and hopefully you pick up some stuff from it as well. I'm excited to try out all these changes, particularly messing around with Warlocks, because it is an alliance that is close to my heart as more than it should be. And yeah, that'll be it for me today. Thank you once again for checking this out, and take care.